God's story, Jesus as a kid. So part of God's story is about how Jesus was a kid, and it goes like this. The Bible doesn't tell us a lot about what Jesus was like as a kid. We know he was born in a manger. We know when he was about 2, Magi, people who studied the stars, brought him gifts and bowed down to worship him. We know God protected him from a king who wanted to kill him. And we find out a lot about Jesus as an adult. But this story is about when Jesus was 12 years old and he took a trip with his parents. They left their home in a place called Nazareth to travel to Jerusalem and celebrate Passover. Passover is a special celebration for God's family to remember some of the amazing ways God has taken care of them. Anyway, back then, people didn't have cars or airplanes, so they traveled by walking or maybe riding on a donkey. But it was about 90 miles from Nazareth to Jerusalem, so that's a pretty long walk, even for a donkey. They'd have to travel for days. So Jesus, his parents, and the rest of their family joined with other relatives and friends from Nazareth to travel together. It was probably a huge crowd. Sometimes Jesus was playing with friends or cousins, so Mary and Joseph didn't always know where he was. That's why, after Passover, they traveled the whole day before they realized Jesus was missing. Mary and Joseph panicked. They had left Jesus in a strange city, or worse, what if they lost him along the road? They turned around right away and went back to Jerusalem looking everywhere for him. They looked for one day, and then another day, and then a third day. Finally, they discovered Jesus in the temple. That's like a church, a place to worship God with other people. Well, the really surprising thing is, Jesus wasn't even scared. Guess what he was doing? He was sitting with teachers, listening to them and asking questions. And even though all of them were grown-ups, they were amazed at how well this kid understood God's word and how well he was able to ask questions. When Jesus' parents saw him with all the grown-ups, they didn't know what to think. "Son," Mary said to him, "why have you done this to us? Your father and I have been looking for you everywhere." "Why did you need to look for me?" Jesus asked. "Didn't you know that I must be in my Father's house?" Remember, a temple is a place to worship God, so it's kind of like God's house. And Jesus is God's son. He loved being in a place where he could worship God and talk to others about God's story. But Mary and Joseph didn't understand why Jesus wanted to stay. They wanted him to come home with them. After all, he was their son too. Kids, it's kind of hard to understand how Jesus was God's son and Mary and Joseph's son, but he was, and is, and always has been God's son. Mary and Joseph got to take care of him on earth. Anyway, Jesus obeyed his parents and went back to Nazareth with them. Then, the Bible tells us that Jesus grew in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and all the people. That means he grew up and learned new things and was loved by God and by people. And that's the story of Jesus as a kid. So in case you missed it, here's the quick version. There's just one story of Jesus as a kid. He was 12. He took a trip with his family. His parents thought they lost him. They panicked. Jesus was in God's house. He wanted to stay. But Jesus obeyed his parents. They went back to Nazareth. Jesus grew up. He learned things. God loved Jesus. Other people loved Jesus too. And that's a part of God's story.